tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this?
Are you rethinking this policy?
Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. Now, in my big opinion, a Labour government is coming. Be careful what you wish for. My Mark Meets guest is radio and TV legend Pat Sharp. My God, that guy has got some showbiz stories. Plus, what does he make of the woke world of the media in 2023? Would he get away with the hijinks that he did in the 80s? And by the way, what about that hairdo? It's even more impressive than mine. In the big story, do Israel have a case to answer for the conflict in the Middle East? We'll hear from both sides on that one. And I'm looking forward to this in my take at 10 with the world in crisis. We need a proper leader in the White House. It's time for Joe Biden to be impeached on the grounds of ill health. Now, I know that impeachment is to do with breaking law. I don't care. Impeach him. He should not be president. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. It is 9 o'clock. 2 hours of big opinion and big debate coming along. First, it's my big opinion after the headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story tonight. The Israeli Prime Minister's office has confirmed the release of 2 hostages who are being held by Hamas. Judith and Natalie Ranan have been taken to a military base in central Israel. Well, earlier, Israel military sources gave more information about the estimated 200 hostages taken hostage by the terrorist organisation. They say 30 are teenagers and young children, and 20 are over the age of 60. The majority are still alive. The Prime Minister has praised Egypt for its efforts in trying to deliver aid to civilians in Gaza. After meeting the country's president, Rishi Sunak said Palestinians are also victims of Hamas and expressed his condolences for the loss of lives. He also stressed the importance of opening a safe corridor to Gaza.
One thing we have prioritised consistently is getting the Rafah crossing opening. It's been a feature of all my conversations, and I'm very pleased that that will now imminently happen. We announced an increase in our funding for humanitarian aid into the region, and when I met with President Sisi earlier today, he and I had a good discussion about how the UK can provide practical assistance on the ground to ensure the sustainability of that aid through the crossing to the people who need it.
Well, back here, Sir Kier Starmer says former Tory voters have put their trust and their confidence in the Labour Party after they overturned Conservative majorities to win 2 by-elections. The video we're about to show contains some flash photography. In Tamworth, Sarah Edwards overturned a Conservative majority of more than 19,000. Meanwhile, Alistair Stratham took mid-Bedfordshire with a 20.5% swing, the largest Labour by-election win since 1945. Kier Starmer says it's history in the making.
Well, these are huge victories. Either of these results would have been extraordinary. Both together they are historic. These are seats that we've never won before, or rarely won before, and we've had swings of over 20%, and we've now had 4 by-elections with swings of over 20% if you take Selby and Rutherglen as well. So, you know, that is a very, very important investing of confidence and trust in a changed Labour Party.
West Mercia Police says a man in his 60s has died after getting caught in fast-flowing floodwater in Shropshire. He's believed to be the 3rd fatality as Storm Babette continues to cause severe weather conditions. This afternoon, a passenger plane came off the runway at Leeds Bradford Airport while landing. Emergency services responded as passengers were evacuated. However, there were no reported injuries. Earlier, the Met Office issued a new 24-hour red weather warning in central and north-east Scotland, with further heavy rainfall expected. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
My thanks to Ray Addison, who's back in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Happy Friday, one and all. The weekend starts here. In my big opinion, a Labour government is coming. Be careful what you wish for. In the big story, do Israel have a case to answer for the conflict in the Middle East? We'll hear from both sides on that one. My Mark Meets guest is radio and TV legend Pat Sharp. And in my Take at 10 with the world in crisis, we need a proper leader in the White House. It's time for Joe Biden to be impeached on the grounds of ill health. Now, I know impeachment is to do with breaking the law, but I don't care. I want him out of the White House. I want proper leadership. Also, after shocking video emerges showing him contradicting himself on Israel, is Kier Starmer, the man who would be our next Prime Minister, a liar? Well, that's the view of a strong Labour Guardian columnist. I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker for her reaction, Edwina Curry. We got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30 sharp with three top pundits tonight who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Who's in the green room? Let's take a look. Well, look at that. Mike Porky Parry, a broadcasting legend, a podcaster, an icon of Fleet Street no less. Alongside him, the brilliant Chloe Dobbs, student campaigner, entrepreneur and all-round legend. And how about this, speaking of legend, I've used the L word, Nina Mishkov, the Queen of Fleet Street. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, should Britain have a cap on the number of refugees that it accepts every year? Is there still snobbery towards people with regional accents? And should under-18s be allowed to have plastic surgery procedures? Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails. They come straight to my laptop, mark@gbnews.com. And this show has a golden rule, but we're going to introduce that rule in a special way. So new viewers or listeners to the show, take notes. I received this in the post just a few days ago, the old GB News post room. And I was very happy to tear open the packaging, bubble wrapped. And inside was a mug. And this mug has been gifted to me by one of our wonderful viewers. He's called Matthew. And it's a personalised mug, and it's got the name of the show on it with my ugly mug on the mug. That's right, a picture of me. It says, Tonight Live with Mark Dolan, weekends 9 p.m. And then, on the other side of the mug, it's got the show's catchphrase. And if you're having trouble, Josh, I know it's probably quite hard to see, but why don't you viewers at home just have a squint? The mug says, we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. So, Matthew, thank you so much for the mug. We shall be using this. This is now the official Mark Dolan Tonight mug. And let me tell you that I cannot leave the house. I cannot go to the supermarket, I can't go for a walk, I can't do anything without being stopped by viewers of GB News, viewers of Mark Dolan Tonight, who say they love the show, they find it a breath of fresh air, and they always say, keep up the good work. And I'm so grateful. This show is nothing without you. So, as well as Matthew and the rest of the gang, let's build a bit of a family, let's build a community. And if you're enjoying the show, and if you're enjoying the channel, tell your friends, tell the world, and let's change the world together. We start now with my big opinion. At the next election, the Tories won't have Get Brexit Done. They won't have the inexorable Jeremy Corbyn. They won't have Boris's boosterism. And they won't have Nigel Farage stepping aside, pulling candidates from marginal Tory seats. Following double by-election disaster for the Tories yesterday in seats safer than a night out with Mary Berry, Prime Minister Starmer looks like a foregone conclusion. And who could blame voters? Fed up with the highest taxes since the war, fed up with inflation, fed up with a new Prime Minister every 10 minutes, fed up with spiralling interest rates, fed up with the almighty economic hangover of those ridiculous and, in my view, utterly failed lockdowns. People are fed up with illegal migrant crossings and eye-watering levels of legal migration into the country, a city the size of Liverpool every year. People are fed up with the woke takeover of our institutions, fed up with crime, fed up with NHS waiting lists, fed up with everything. You couldn't blame the public for seeking change. Part of me thinks it would be very healing for Britain to give another party a chance. I do wonder whether the prospect of another 5 years of Tory rule could produce a mild democratic crisis, with woke lefties taking to the streets, placard in one hand, not my government, and a 2-shot skinny cappuccino from Pret-a-Manger in the other. With left versus right having participated in a political relay race for the last 100 years, perhaps it's time for Kier Starmer to carry the baton to maintain the order of the universe. But I'm not so sure. You want lower taxes. Are they going to come down under Labour, who are planning a spending spree in the already bloated public sector? Kier Starmer's got a shopping list longer than Kim Kardashian at her local Gucci. You want inflation to come down. Is that going to happen under Labour, as they offer inflation-busting pay rises to the union barons who fund their party? You want less of the woke rubbish, which is sucking the joy out of life and making it a criminal offence to have your own thoughts and say what you think. But Starmer is a Prime Minister in waiting who still struggles to identify what a woman is, even though he's married to one. There was even a rumour floating around, unsubstantiated, that Labour could make misgendering someone criminal. In other words, calling an intact biological male who identifies as female a man. Imagine that, being banged up in prison for stating a scientific biological fact. That gives you a potential flavour of the authoritarian dystopian regime we might live under. You want reliable, cheap energy. Is that going to happen under Labour, who want to create a 1970s-style state energy company with your money betting the house on flaky renewables, which have been such a disaster for Germany? Do you see the problem? Voters are politically homeless. The Tories and Labour are both terrible. We are between a rock and a hard place. Not helped by my friend and colleague here at GB News, Richard Tice, who is understandably hoovering up support among disconcerted Labour and in particular Tory voters. As a dominant player, I think Reform UK could be an excellent government, and Richard Tice a very fine Prime Minister. Never say never. But given their minnow status currently, it looks like taking a few thousand votes off the Tories in key constituencies, which is what happened yesterday, will achieve only one thing: a guaranteed Labour government. The right of politics in this country appears to be voting for its own extinction. They are cancelling themselves. Now, I don't think a Labour government will be all bad. The idea that it's simply time for a change is a compelling one. But at the moment, it feels to me like leaving your slightly rubbish boyfriend, who's not great, for someone even worse. Love on the rebound very rarely works out. A Labour government is coming. Be careful what you wish for. I fear Britain is about to jump out of the frying pan into the fire. What's your view, Mark, at gbnews.com? Let's get to the pundits tonight. TV and radio presenter Mike Porky Parry, political commentator Chloe Dobbs, and journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. Nina, let me start with you. The bottom line is that the Tories are a terrible boyfriend, Labour even worse.
Labour are not even worse. I mean, anything would be better than the current Tory government. 13 years have left this country on its knees. And we're not talking about wokery, because that is just mere window dressing and rearranging deck chairs. The real issues are people better off under the Tories? No. Are they happier? No. Are they healthier? Look at the state of the NHS. Do they travel about the country easily and better? No. Look at the state of our transport. So we are actually at a stage where we are crying out for a change. And, you know, the Tories are supposed to be the party of law and order. Look at the state of the Met. Look at the state of the police forces. We're supposed to be the party of business. Look at a year ago. It's just a year ago that it's the anniversary, I think, of Liz Truss resigning, isn't it? So the Tories crashed the economy a year ago, and people are still feeling the pain. Young people, never mind, can get on the property line. middle-aged people cannot get mortgages. Nobody can get a mortgage. The whole of the property market is stuck. And people, you know, older people wanting to downsize, they can't do it. People are stuck. And it's just desperate.
All of the problems you've outlined are absolutely right. But in what universe do Labour fix those problems? Inflation, cost of living, energy supply, it's all a disaster.
It's not a disaster. Well, they're inheriting a terrible mess. And Kier Starmer, and as you know, I don't vote Labour. So he's not my hero. He happens to be my MP, but I didn't vote for him.
But you'd rather have a Labour government than a Conservative one?
Of course I would. I absolutely would. Because he has a plan. Rachel Reeves is a very impressive Shadow Chancellor.
You said that. Mark Carney. And Mark Carney was the man who's put us into the financial mess we're in now.
Oh, Mark Carney
former governor of the Bank of England.
Former governor of the Bank of England, never did anything about interest rates, started printing money. That's one of the reasons we're in such terrible trouble now, I promise you. And if he endorses Rachel Reeves, it's because they're thinking the same way, so we know what's going to come.
No, Rachel Reeves is very smart. Kier Starmer has not promised anything like a miracle.
He hasn't promised anything.
No, he's said that it's going to take 10 years to undo the mess that it is now.
Except the Labour-sponsored public sector will be expecting a bumper pay rise when he gets it.
They won't.
Huge.
They won't.
And if they don't get it, there will be a civil war within the Labour Party.
There will be.
There has been a civil war, and Kier Starmer has won.
No,
he has quelled
he
the
hasn't.
left.
He
has been brilliant. He has
that's
quelled
just
the left.
Cosmetic.
You say it's
Chloe,
cosmetic.
I'm sorry, I'm
We'll
just
come to
jumping
Chloe
in.
in just a moment, but Mike Parry, don't worry, Chloe is ready to drop the
Mike
microphone.
wants to hear from you, I know. But look, the reason why the railway workers and the doctors are consistently not settling is because they're hoping for a general election that will put Labour in power, and then they will get cash loads of money given to them by a Labour government.
That's untrue.
No,
the reason they're not settling is because the government's policy for the last year has been not to sit around the table, has not getting them to discuss. They will not discuss.
Nina, you must have seen Angela Rayner's speeches at both the TUC conference and the Labour conference, where she promised workers in this country the earth.
She didn't promise them the earth.
I'm not sure she did, but what she did do, she did promise more union power, which means more strikes if Labour gets in.
More strikes,
not necessarily more strikes.
OK, more briefing before I come...
Scaremongering. It is not.
It's not scaremongering. She said it. Angela Rayner said, I'm going to make the working classes more powerful than ever.
People who go on strike are people like you and me. They are not some two-horned brand of devil. They are people. And would they have every right to withdraw the Labour? And if it's I repeat...
And let people die.
No,
and let people die in hospitals,
They're striking for better conditions. And to stop that happening, the reason is that the government has not sat down around the table. A year ago, Grant Shapps, when he was Transport Minister, before he had all these other jobs since... He never sat down with the union. The railway.
And these £100,000 a year hospital consultants, right? We really should try and give them some more money.
They're worth it. When you have your heart attack...
I did have a heart attack, don't worry, it's been sorted.
I was going to say, when you have another heart attack, you don't want your local pharmacy guy to look after you. You want a consultant for £100,000.
OK, well, God forbid, I fear it's going to happen tonight. Chloe Dobbs, you get to speak for the rest of the show. I wonder whether the Tories are terrible, right? But I think that to vote Labour is like leaving your rubbish boyfriend for someone even worse.
Yeah, I think that could be the case. But, I mean, you know, Nina has pointed out very clearly some of the problems that are really affecting people's lives. The Tories, what distinguishes them is that they're meant to be the party of business, the party that supports home ownership, etc., and the party that supposedly is better at safeguarding the economy. They've failed on all of those things. So even though Labour is a big risk, and I think, yes, it might be like going to the worst boyfriend, people think, well, what have we got to lose? So hence people are quite likely...
Would it be good for our democracy as well? Would there be something cleansing about it, that just a change of hands at the top... perhaps it would be good for a sense that our democracy works.
Well, cleanse your hands and bankrupt the country at the same time. Labour governments always...
The Tories have bankrupted the country. They've bankrupted it already.
Persuaded by the commitment of Rachel Reeves to get the OBR, the Office of budget responsibility to always identify whether policies can be afforded when Labour are in government. They've committed to OBR commitments.
No, because so much of what we heard from these, so far from these government quangos, has turned out to be false. Nina also said, oh, we're in terrible trouble business-wise. We're doing better than Germany. Germany are in recession and we are not. We went through Brexit and we now perform better than the German powerhouse.
Chloe, you get the last word.
Well, look, you might be able to tell voters we're a few percentage points ahead of Germany's progress, but at the end of the day, normal people in Britain really are feeling the pinch. They feel like they can't buy a house, they can't afford their rent. We've got a government that is just crashing the economy and not achieving anything. People are willing to take the risk and vote Labour. I feel very politically homeless.
And you speak as a Conservative supporter.
I have no idea who I'm going to vote for at the next election, to be
back
honest.
to me,
I
Josh.
feel homeless.
Back to me. What about that, right? Chloe Dobbs, a Conservative supporter, has just thrown in the towel. She basically left the Conservative Party on Mark Dolan tonight at 18 minutes past 9.
Shocking.
Poor old Rishi. Rishi Sunak's just spat out his Diet Coke from that expensive flask of his. There you go. Are the Tories imploding? We'll debate that later. But coming up next in the big story, do Israel have a case to answer for the conflict in the Middle East? We'll hear from both sides on that one. That's next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this?
Are you rethinking this policy?
Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, that was the topic of my big opinion. A Labour government is coming. Be careful what you wish for. Big reaction on email, mark at gbnews.com. Producer Maria has told me to keep it tight, so here we go. Alan has said, Mark, what financial aid is Starmer offering people with the cost of living and energy? Sunak has given many, many millions. Nothing coming from Labour to support them. People have short memories. Emily, hi Mark, these results show that the alternative parties will lose the Tories' seats and that Labour will get the majority of votes. The Tories need to introduce popular policies that voters really want. Tony, yes, Mark, I'm a pensioner and I am better off under the Conservatives. And last but not least, Richard. Hi, Mark. Here's what's coming. A public purse busting, wealth-hating, woke dystopia, together with the great Brexit reversal if Labour get in. Apart from that, everything looks rosy. We'll keep those opinions coming, especially if you want to be supportive of Labour. Mark at gbnews.com, because Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion. So keep them coming. It's time now for the big story, and it's been almost 2 weeks since the Hamas attack on Israel, which led to the death of over 1,300 civilians and the capture of over 200 hostages. There has understandably been widespread condemnation of what happened, but the events of the last 2 weeks has sparked a debate about the root of this conflict, with many Palestinians taking to the streets calling for freedom, whilst at the same time Jewish people being subjected to the highest level of anti-Semitism in many years. So is this a conflict which sees blame on both sides, or do Israel have a case to answer for their treatment of Palestinians? Shortly, I shall be joined by digital activist Lizzie Savetsky. But first, let's speak to war journalist Yara Eid. Yara, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, what is your reaction to what happened on the 7th of October?
I think, this is a misleading question, because if we want to water down what happened to only what's happening on the 7th of October, it actually ignores what's been happening for the last 75 years. I grew up my whole life in Gaza. When I was 14 years old, I saw people being cut into pieces in front of my eyes. And that's actually why I left and I went to the UK. So this kind of violence, this kind of massacres that have been committed, didn't happen just after the Hamas attack on Israel. This is not an unprovoked attack. What's been happening is been years of ethnic cleansing, years of genocide, years of torture and imprisoning children and minors. So we can't talk about what's happening without taking in consideration everything that's been happening since 1948, since the establishment of Israel.
What you've described is truly, truly appalling and absolutely devastating. But do you condemn in isolation that attack 2 weeks ago?
Well, Mark, I think you've literally interviewed so many Israeli spokesperson and so many Israeli, people who are in government even. I'm a journalist, and I don't see you, Mark, asking them to condemn the actions of the IDF. I don't see you asking them to condemn the killing of more than 1,600 children. Did you know that more than 700 children are also stuck under the rubble, and they're probably going to be also killed? So I don't understand why this obsession of asking Palestinians. I'm not a spokesperson for Hamas. I'm a journalist. I'm a journalist who had 30 members of my family killed in the last week. My best friend, who's also a journalist, and we were working together on covering the 2022 aggression on Gaza, he was killed in cold blood. He was wearing a press vest, he was wearing a helmet, and he was killed, with alongside at least more than 14 other journalists who have been targeted by Israel. So I don't think you're asking me about condemnation is what you should really be doing, because you've never done that to other Israelis. So what I condemn is the Israeli actions of killing Palestinian civilians and children over and over again, not only since the 7th of October.
And now, Yara, I take what you're saying on board, but I interviewed the editor of the Jewish Chronicle last weekend, and I put that point to him about Israel's behaviour towards Palestine. And I did the same with a former general in the IDF. So I certainly have held Israeli voices to account, and I'll be doing so in just a few minutes. But can you honestly not condemn both the behaviour of what you perceive to be Israeli cruelty, Israeli genocide, and that of Hamas on the 7th of October? Can you not agree that that's horrific too and that it's terror?
Well, as a Palestinian journalist, and actually not just that, as a human, obviously the loss of any life is tragic. But what has been happening has been a genocide of Palestinians for the last 75 years. So if we're going to only look at what Hamas is doing now, we're ignoring the root cause of what's happening. We're ignoring the thousands that have been killed in Palestine. We're ignoring that more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed since 2010. No, sorry, since 2000. So if we're thinking about Hamas, let's just think for a second about the West Bank. Let's think about the circumstances in the West Bank and how people live there. How can you justify the killing of children? How can you justify the torture of minors? How can you justify the imprisonment of so many Palestinians there? Because you're going to ask me about the hostages by Hamas, How can you justify the 5,200 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons who are being tortured day by day? You see, I want an answer for that before.
Well, look, I'm so sorry to hear about your devastating loss, Yara, and thank you so much for sharing your views on the programme. I hope we speak again in the near future. My thanks there to war correspondent and journalist Yara Eid. Let's now speak to my next guest, and I'm delighted to welcome digital activist Lizzie Savetsky. Lizzie, your reaction to what you've just heard?
I'm not surprised to hear these messages of propaganda to say that Israel has been committing a genocide of Palestinians for 75 years is a complete lie. I just want to say that the Hamas charter calls for the extermination of the Jewish people. It is written in black and white. So the only genocide that we should be talking about is the genocide that Hamas wishes upon the Jewish people. Israel has presented peace proposals to the Palestinian leadership over and over again, and every single time they have been rejected. So we have wanted peace. We have tried to make peace happen, but we cannot live side by side with people who want to kill us. It is impossible. I wish that there was a way to rectify the situation and eradicate Hamas without a loss of life, but unfortunately, we are up against a terrorist organization who is currently holding their own people hostage because they want maximal casualties so that Israel will look as bad as possible. Also, the prisoners that are being held in Israel and tortured, as she said, are terrorists. So we're talking about people who have come into Israel or live there and tried to kill Jews for one reason, because they're Jewish. These are not people who want peace. These are not people who want a two-state solution. They're terrorists, and that is why they are in jail.
And Lizzie, what would you say to those who argue that Gaza is an open prison, that Palestinians are second-class citizens in the region, and that Israel is guilty of war crimes itself?
I would say that Gaza has been given billions of dollars from nations all around the world so that they could build an infrastructure, so that they could build schools, hospitals, and a better economic future for the Palestinian people who live there. But instead, they've used that money to line the pockets of their leaders and build tunnels of terrors and buy weapons. And so I would say that whatever living conditions that they're living in are their own making, and there's nobody to blame but their terrorist leadership, Hamas.
But Lizzie, do you not acknowledge any unacceptable behaviour or conduct by the Israeli forces over the years?
The IDF is the most moral army in the world. They drop leaflets and warn before attacks. They even hacked into the news in Gaza to warn the civilians there to leave. They went to the great lengths to do that. They have a special bomb that they drop to shake the roof of the building. I don't know another country that has a moral army. So if there are innocent civilians that are being killed, the tragic loss of lives there, the only culprit here is Hamas, because they will not let their civilians leave. They are keeping them there. They use their children and innocent people as human shields so that Israel will look bad and will have maximal casualties. It's just insane.
Lizzie, my deep thanks to your contribution to the programme as well. I wish we were speaking under happier circumstances and look forward to your return to the programme. Digital activist Lizzie Savetsky. Well, folks, you've heard from both sides. Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion. What is yours? mark@gbnews.com. Do Israel have a case to answer for the conflict in the Middle East? OK, those rather noisy pundits are hitting the sofa in a couple of minutes, and I'll be asking them, should Britain have a cap on the number of refugees that it accepts every year? Is there still snobbery towards people with regional accents? And should under-18s be allowed to have plastic surgery procedures? Fireworks are going to absolutely explode on that one. Looking forward to it. During the break, I'm going to enjoy this lovely branded mug from one of my viewers. Cheers.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Now, listen, a big reaction to the big story debate. Do Israel have a case to answer for their conduct in the Middle East and the ongoing conflict? Well, a quick one from Chris. Mark, Israel needs to reverse all settlements built on Palestinian land in direct contravention of one of a number of UN laws. Mike says it goes back to biblical days, the history of the Middle East, not 1948. There you go. Well, look, it is a complex and rather distressing issue, and clearly one that's not going to go away. Any developments from Israel or Gaza, we will bring them to you straight away. But for now, let's get back to the other big stories of the day with TV and radio star Mike Parry, co-founder of Talk Sport, no less. Also, the brilliant political commentator and broadcaster Chloe Dobbs, and Fleet Street legend, the queen of showbiz journalism for many decades, journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. Now, according to the Home Office, by January 2025, an annual cap will be put in place on the number of refugees allowed to live in the UK. Local authorities will be able to set a limit on welcoming asylum seekers coming by legal routes according to their capacities. As campaigners have ridiculed the government for passing on the baton to underfunded councils, should Britain have a cap on the number of refugees that it accepts every year? And what might that number be? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.com. Chloe Dobbs, what do you think?
I mean, I'm surprised that there isn't already a cap. How on earth can it be the law that just anyone and everyone, no matter what number, can come in? As we've spoken about earlier in the show, we live in a country now where if you're having a heart attack, the ambulance won't turn up for the average now is 45 minutes, by the way, and you can't get a house. I mean, we're in, I know you've heard it many times, broken Britain. How on earth can we just have unlimited numbers coming in? But I wouldn't say that putting a cap on refugees solves the whole problem, which is the invasion of our southern border. Obviously, it would be better if we are able to stop people who are coming across who are just economic migrants and offer more help to refugees that genuinely need our help. But it shouldn't be unlimited numbers, absolutely no way. So I think the cap is absolutely necessary.
All right, and what might that figure be, do you think? I mean, if overall net migration into the country, including refugees, what's a reasonable figure, do you think? Last year, legal net migration was over 600,000.
Well, definitely nowhere near that, maybe 200,000, something like that.
You and I kindred spirits, because I suggested 200,000 just 2 weeks ago on the show. But Mike, what do you think would be a reasonable number of, for a start, refugees to welcome every year?
Well, I think the whole issue has been raised again in the last 48 hours by Humza Yousaf, the leader of the SNP, standing up at a conference and saying, right, we've got to start bringing people here now from Gaza. I was going to say Hamas, but Gaza, they're not necessarily Hamas people, they're Palestinians.
But some could be Hamas supporters.
This is the problem. We don't know who we're letting into our country, do we? When a group of able young men...
Well, that's what the Home Office is there for, to interview them and
but you can't. When a group of 50 young men with no women or children get into a boat, come across the channel, get off in Folkestone, walk up the beach. We don't know anything about them. They've thrown away the phones, thrown away their passports if they had one. We don't know who we're letting in. So I totally support what Chloe has said, that you've got to have a more beneficial eye on who's coming here. As for caps, I totally agree with Chloe again. Those who need help, we help, and those who are trying to scam it as economic immigrants should be singled out and sent back to where they came from. But that's a big process.
Do you want to break down the numbers? You're quite keen on a spreadsheet, Mike. You're a bit of a property magnate. You're all about the bottom line. How many refugees per year and how many overall legal net migration would you say?
The problem is legal net migration now is about 600,000, isn't it? And that's
2018, it was 333,000. So it's gone. It's almost doubled.
And that's people from Afghanistan, from Hong Kong, and from Ukraine. OK, and these are people that we know desperately need our help. That's the problem.
It's not just that. It's not just that. And, can I just say, I'm glad you used the word refugees, because people just talk about illegal migrants. There are genuine refugees, and that's...
But they're not all, Nina. You know they're not.
I know that. I know that. We talked about the Albanians, and many of them were economic migrants, and we did a deal with Albania, and now they go back, so that's fine. But what I'm saying is the bulk of the... of people that come here are not on boats or stowed away in lorries. How can you have? It's not 606,000. These are the people who come here legally, and it's not just Hong Kong, it's not just Afghanistan, and it's not just Ukraine. It is many students, many Chinese students who add an enormous amount to the economy. If you cut down on the visa, the number of visas for students, the universities would go under.
Well, what about GP places? What about housing?
I agree.
What
completely.
about roads?
I agree completely.
I agree with you. If people come in and they've got something to offer to the economy...
Many people do.
Well, that is fantastic, but...
Get them working.
As Mark's just pointed out, one of these days we're going to run out of water, we're going to run out of land to build houses, we're going to run out of doctors' surgeries, so you've got to have much greater control of it before society
better government. That's why you need to vote Labour.
Plus, I think we're mixing up refugee status with people seeking to make a better life here.
Absolutely.
But you can't identify with refugees if they're going to make a contribution to the country or not. You would hope they will, but in many cases that doesn't happen.
In many cases, in most cases, it does. I mean, the number of visas that are
briefly
granted.
Yeah, look, I'm I'm actually very pro-immigration in the long term, but I recognise that it needs to be a gradual process. I would like more people who want a better life and want to move to Britain, who are going to be able to contribute, to be able to move here. But you can't just at the snap of the fingers have, hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
No.
Okay,
You're not having hundreds.
Kier Starmer
wants more.
Okay, well, can I have a number then, Nina? What's a good number?
175,000 backlog for the Home Office to process, which is ridiculous. If the Home Office processed them, we wouldn't have this problem.
Let's get down to brass tacks. What's a good number, an overall number for legal net migration, including refugees per year? Would you keep it at 600,000?
I don't have a cap. No,
Politician's answer from Nina Mishka.
No, I would not.
I thought you
have a
shoot
cap.
from the hip.
No, it would not.
Where's the truth bomb?
I would not.
Give me a number. If it's 1 million, say it.
I wouldn't want to. Who'd want 1 million? You're exaggerating. But I would not have a cap.
I'd have 150,000.
Because life happens.
And Mike's gone for...
Because life happens and death happens and we have to deal with it.
As do accents. Now, from Yorkshire to Cockney, Scouse to Geordie, we have a wonderful patchwork of regional accents throughout our country. Diversity doesn't just stop at the point of our accents, though. There's a rich variety of different dialects, ranging from the affectionate Ben in God's own country of Yorkshire to the loving Bab in Birmingham. But are we still prejudiced towards those with regional accents in society? I'm trying to think who the most regional is, and it's probably you, Porky, isn't it?
I think it's Chloe from Cornwall.
Oh, you see, but the problem is, I feel that she's very posh Cornish. I feel you've had it flattened out a little bit.
I just avoided getting the accent my whole life. But to be honest...
I think it's like Cornish meets Queen Elizabeth.
The people in Cornwall that have an accent are just kind of the farmers and the people who just stay in their bubble and the people who have had, 5 past generations of their family.
There's nothing wrong with those people.
Most normal people in Cornwall don't have a strong accent.
I don't think that Chloe's got a strong accent, has she?
No, she hasn't. But no, sorry. I'm not talking about it.
When you've had a drink?
Yes, but then Cornwall is hardly normal these days. Cornwall is so invaded. We're talking about refugees. So invaded in the summer by middle-class people. The beaches there are a nightmare of red trouser-wearing parents and
Bowden catalogue.
I know all
absolutely.
about
All of that
without it. Tourism is their only industry.
I watch Poldark. I know about Cornwall.
What do you think, Mike? I mean, you're from Cheshire, aren't you?
I'm from Chester, actually.
Chester, forgive me.
The county town of Cheshire.
Whoops. What's your view on accents?
Well, I like accents. I like the Geordie accent, actually. I worked for 3 years up in Newcastle on the Evening Chronicle newspaper.
You started your career, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I started on the Chester Chronicle, actually, the weekly paper, down up there. But I love Geordie land anyway. It's almost like a nation of its own, you know what I mean? They're so proud of their heritage and all that, so I like the accent. I worked in Birmingham, and I had quite a bit of Brummie in the way I speak, and people sometimes think I'm from there. But I love the regional accents, and, it's almost like going on holiday when you go to another city in this country, because, for instance, I went to the University of the Trent. It's actually called Trent Polytechnic in those days. But when you ordered a drink in a bar and somebody said, "What do you want, me duck?" and those sort of, regional twists, me duck and all that kind of stuff.
I
love all the accents you hear in London, which come from around the world. That's what I like best.
There you go. Bit of diversity. Who doesn't love it? Look, what do you think? What's the best accent? Mark at gbnews.com. Have you been prejudged against for your accent? Now, coming up in my Take at 10, with the world in crisis, we need a proper leader in the White House. It's time for Joe Biden to be impeached on the grounds of ill health. But first, my Mark Meets guest is radio and TV legend Pat Sharp. Plus, in an exclusive Mark Dolan tonight People's Poll, I've been asking, should Britain have a cap on the number of refugees? The results are in. I shall reveal all next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up in my Take a 10 with the world in crisis, we need a proper leader in the White House. It's time for Joe Biden to be impeached on the grounds of ill health. I know you can't do impeachment because that's about breaking the law. I don't care. We need someone strong in the White House. But first, my Mark Meets guest is radio and TV legend Pat Sharp. Yes, indeed. Broadcasting legend Pat Sharp, who got his first big break on Radio 1 at the age of just 20. He still looks 20, by the way. There followed loads of presenting gigs on Top of the Pops, the coveted mid-morning slot on Capital Radio. And on TV, Pat really made his mark with the cult TV hit Funhouse on ITV. Look at that.
Look at that.
Look at those strides. Pizza delivery man, eat your heart out. And what about that Barnett? We'll talk about that shortly.
Oh.
It's all been shorn off. He also wowed audiences on I'm a Celebrity and won The Weakest Link, raising a fortune for charity. Plus, he's one of the most in-demand live DJs in the country. Always relevant, always youthful and always fun. Pat Sharp is a British institution who joins me now. Pat, great to see you.
Thank you, Mark. Great to see you too. And that's such a nice welcome. I don't really know how to follow it, but thank you.
Listen, you've had a lot of success and a lot of staying power. What do you put that down to? Because you've managed to go across several generations in terms of your fan base.
Yeah, I suppose right place, right time when I started. You know, I got a really good break. I started at Radio 1 when I was 20, and I'd never actually done a radio show, so it's quite bizarre that the first show I ever did was sitting in for Steve Wright in the afternoon. I'd never even been on hospital radio, so that really was right place,
How did that come about?
Oh, just as I say, right place, right time. My manager said, give this guy a shot. He's never done anything, but you like his demo, so let's see how he goes. And they said, yeah, go on, then put him in the afternoon. He's away for a week.
That's amazing. Was it one show or a week of shows?
It was a whole week, yeah.
And what were your emotions for that first show? The red light goes on.
For me, very odd, you know, being on, handing over to Peter Powell and all these legends who I ended up working with, and, you know, Tony Blackburn and Kid Jensen and so on and so forth, who all became my friends. So I suppose, in a way, nervous but excited.
You probably reached about 10 million listeners in your first week in broadcasting.
At first minute, yeah, like we're doing now.
Well, too right, absolutely. We're working on it. Okay. And we are getting there. Listen, Pat, that's amazing that you did that and that's how you started. What about these live shows where you DJ? This is what you do now. And you've got a massive following, haven't you? You do enormous venues.
I'm really lucky, Mark, because nostalgia is so popular. So basically, most of my living in the present is made
from the past. So it's based on me doing DJ sets, but with personality. So I don't mix, I don't stand there just being all cool and you never hear me speak. Everything's done with the mic. Everything's done in a way that makes the DJ set really come alive. And I'm doing gigs that are just uplifting and make people feel good. And I play all over the world. I'm playing in Dubai next month. I've just played in Norway. I'm playing at Butlins tomorrow. There you go.
It's absolutely amazing. You could maybe spin some discs for us tonight. Wouldn't mind a bit of music on the show. Do you have to choreograph the evening? Is it about sort of taking them up, bringing them down again? Is it all very sort of carefully planned, the DJ set?
It's not planned at all. It's based on the crowd, on the night, at that moment. And I will literally change what I'm doing as I look out and decide. So I could have something lined up, completely change what I'm doing and stop all the music and then just suddenly go out and do a bit of banter.
Right, so you kind of think, oh, Candle in the Wind is really killing the crowd here. I better go up tempo.
I haven't got that with me. So, yeah, it's all up. It's all up.
That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me. Listen, you've done so much in radio. I just was reminding you before you came on air that actually, as a lowly, very junior producer, I used to watch you coming in to do Smooth Radio, and a channel we both worked at, 963 Liberty as well, when I was just starting out. How has the media changed in your time? What do you make of radio and TV these days, 2024?
Well, it's obviously changed. Things evolve and they change in a way that if I was, say, for example, to go on the radio tonight and do the show that I did on Capital Radio in the 80s and 90s, people would go, what's this? You know, my voice was bathed in echo and I was at the top of the tower. And it was just a completely different ballgame. But what I did and what I created at the time, a lot of people have loved and said they got into radio because of that. However, it's a different game now. You know, it's programmed differently and you have to speak when told to speak. And there's talk elements, as you know, much like now. So, you know.
Is it a bit corporate now? You know, I'm imagining in the 80s you'd have a pile of either carts or CDs and you'd choose the tracks that you'd be playing to the nation. Whereas now it's all an algorithm decides who's next. Taylor Swift, followed by
Taylor Swift.
God knows who. Right? Yeah, more Taylor Swift. Ed Sheeran, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So there isn't that much freedom. The DJs, you say, it's all very sort of programmed.
Absolutely, yeah. Things are programmed because they've got the technology to do that, and they can work out whether a song should be played a certain amount of times or not, and indeed whether a DJ should be speaking a certain amount of times or not. But either way, it is what it is, and radio is still a great listen.
Let me reassure you, GB News is not programmed. At best, it's absolute chaos. But listen, let's have a look. Let's have a look at another of your classic hits, and that was the Fun House on ITV. Take a look at this.
Wacky contestants, messy games, the Fun Kart Grand Prix race, and a crazy chase to win lots of prizes. Now here's the guy who puts the fun into Funhouse, Pat Shaw!
Absolute TV gold. Those were the days. I've got to say, that looks so brilliant. You in a banana yellow car.
Yeah, with curtains for hair.
Well, yeah. First of all, Funhouse itself, it was a phenomenon. I think it ran for a decade.
It did, yeah. Probably one of the most successful children's shows of all time, on any channel there was. So I'm very blessed to have done it. Yeah. Myself and Melanie Martina, we did every show from beginning to end.
Are you still in touch with the cast?
Yep. Me and the twins, still good friends.
Is that right? That's brilliant. Listen, that's an amazing thing. What about the barnet? Come on, let's talk about the hair. It's all gone very short back and sides. You look, like you could be a businessman now.
Well, I look like I could be a human being compared to that. Look at that. That's horrendous.
How much work did it take? How much cultivation?
Oh, that's my first Radio 1 shot, that one. That's my first ever promo shot.
Look at all that potential. How could they say no?
Well,
centre parting was not to love.
Yeah, oh, there you are.
We got the highlights there. That's the hedgehog look, right?
Yeah, that's just, I don't know. I just went through a lot of things, and now I'm just me, just natural colour, a bit of grey coming on,
Your hair's lovely. It's gorgeous, right? And you still got it, which is the main thing.
Yeah, I've got some hair.
But I mean, look, it became a trademark, right? It was a great thing. I mean, you had fun with it.
Yeah, and to this day, I mean, there's a mullet calendar now, and I'm the king of it. This Christmas.
Were you ever offended by people's comments about your hair, their obsession with your hair?
No, it's all good fun as long as it's just in good sort of, as I say, jest.
Just brilliant. And listen, The career continues. You're still broadcasting, right? You're doing some broadcasting?
Yeah, I do bits and bobs, absolutely, including this very fine moment with you.
Well, listen, I do hope you come back. We should offer you a regular gig. I'll be honest, I'm not sure we could afford you, but you'd be worth every penny. What is next for you? What's on your list? What do you want to achieve? Because I know that, you've got this massive following around the world now, live. But is there one more job in you that you really fancy a crack at?
Well, it's connected to what I do, Mark, and what we are planning and what we're working on is to take a 30-piece orchestra and do an 80s orchestral show and tour it not only across the UK, but also across Europe and into the UAE.
Well, listen, I would pay to see that. If you're interested in seeing this man live, why don't you head to his website? It is patsharp.co.uk. I knew him 20 years ago. He was nice to me when I was a lowly work experience, and he's...
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on TV, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan tonight. Happy Friday, one and all. The weekend starts here. Why don't you go and grab a cold beer from the fridge, or maybe a glass of something fizzy and French, or perhaps get the kettle on and tear open the custard creams. We've got a busy hour to come. In my take at 10, with the world in crisis, we need a proper leader in the White House. It's time for Joe Biden to be impeached on the grounds of ill health. Also, after shocking video emerges showing him contradicting himself on Israel, is Kier Starmer, the man who would be our next Prime Minister, a liar? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, Edwina Curry. Plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. Mike Porky Parry, Chloe Dobbs and Nina Mishkov. So a packed show, lots to get through. You will not want to miss my take at 10. I'll be dealing with Joe Biden, and I'm not pulling my punches. First, the news and Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening. Our top stories tonight. Israel's Prime Minister's office has confirmed the release of 2 US hostages who are being held by Hamas. Judith and Natalie Renan have been taken to a military base in central Israel. Well, earlier, Israel military sources gave more information about the estimated 200 hostages taken by the terrorist organisation. They say 30 are teenagers and young children, and 20 are over the age of 60. The majority are still alive. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he is not giving up efforts to free all captives. The Prime Minister has praised Egypt for its efforts in trying to deliver aid to civilians in Gaza. After meeting the country's president, Rishi Sunak said Palestinians are also victims of Hamas and expressed his condolences for the loss of lives. He also stressed the importance of opening a safe corridor to Gaza.
One thing we have prioritised consistently is getting the Rafah crossing opening. It's been a feature of all my conversations, and I'm very pleased that that will now imminently happen. We announced an increase in our funding for humanitarian aid into the region, and when I met with President Sisi earlier today, he and I had a good discussion about how the UK can provide practical assistance on the ground to ensure the sustainability of that aid through the crossing to the people who need it.
Sir Kier Starmer says former Tory voters have put their trust and confidence in the Labour Party after they overturned Conservative majorities to win 2 by-elections. The video we're about to show you contains some flash photography. In Tamworth, Sarah Edwards overturned a Conservative majority of more than 19,000. Meanwhile, Alistair Strepham took Mid-Bedfordshire with a 20.5% swing. That's the largest Labour by-election win since 1945. Well, Storm Babette continues to cause major problems across the United Kingdom. In Suffolk, only essential travel is advised, and children have been forced to shelter in schools following severe flooding. Now, this afternoon, a passenger plane came off the runway at Leeds Bradford Airport while landing. Emergency services responded as passengers were evacuated. However, there were no reported injuries. In Scotland, some roads and small bridges have reportedly collapsed. 3 people have died as a result of the storm, most recently a man in his 60s who was swept away in Shropshire. And in Bredsall in Derbyshire, there are also flooded streets, homes and businesses. Firefighters have been tackling a huge blaze in the Whiteley area of East Kilbride. Now, those watching on television can see eyewitness footage of the fire, which has reportedly consumed several homes in the area. The eyewitness described the scene to GB News as unreal. Police Scotland have closed several roads as they deal with the emergency. This is GB News across the UK on television, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. After shock video emerges showing him contradicting himself on Israel, is Kier Starmer, the man who would be our next Prime Minister, a liar? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker Edwina Curry. Plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. Who's with us in the green room? Well, we have TV and radio presenter Mike Porky Parry, a man who made his name in Fleet Street, of course, co-founded TalkSport Radio, entrepreneur, you name it. Plus the brilliant campaigner and presenter and journalist Chloe Dobbs, and the doyen of showbiz reporting, an icon of media, Nina Mishkov. They'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros. Plus, let me tell you, at 10:30, I'll be making a statement about Andrew Bridgen, the MP, formerly Conservative MP, now an independent in the House of Commons. He started a debate about excess deaths in this country, which are worryingly high. No one attended. The place was empty. You could hear a pin drop. Why the silence? I'll be making a statement about the issue of excess deaths at exactly 10:30. It's a short statement, but I don't think you'll want to miss it, and you won't hear the kind of comments I've got to make anywhere else. That's Andrew Bridgen and my statement at 10:30. Andrew Bridgen, by the way, now representing the Reclaim Party. So a packed hour to come. Those papers are on the way. But shall we sort out Joe Biden? Here's my take at 10. History teaches us that when times are tough, You need great leadership. Julius Caesar, Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King, Margaret Thatcher, Nelson Mandela, Mikhail Gorbachev, Ronald Reagan. Unfortunately, as the world descends into crisis, with the powder keg of the Middle East about to erupt, who do we have in post as the leader of the free world, the commander-in-chief of the biggest military on the planet? Slow-mo Joe himself, Joe Biden, a man so decrepit he wouldn't even make it into the cast of Dad's Army on the grounds of age and infirmity. Now, let's be honest, with his mad ramblings, he delivers more comedy clips than you've been framed. Here are just a couple from the last 24 hours.
We will defend every inch of NATO which the treaty requires and calls for. We'll have something that we do not seek. Make it clear, we do not seek. We do not seek to have American troops fighting in Russia. Virtually every mass shooting, every circumstance where a large number of people have been victimized and lost.
Very sad and worrying, to say the least. Let's have a look at the president's in tray, shall we? At home, crumbling cities, lawlessness, a public health crisis caused by obesity, epidemic levels of drug use, a government mired in so much debt it makes Bernard Madoff look positively prudent, and race relations at their lowest point since the 1950s. What about his challenges abroad? Well, Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, which is spiking energy and food prices, costing lives and destabilizing the region. There's a hot mess that is Afghanistan, from which Biden exited America in the most ignominious and expensive way, leaving billions of dollars worth of military equipment in a mineral-rich country, which is now run by effective gangsters. Yeah, the disastrous departure from Afghanistan happened on Slow-Mo Joe's watch. There's the growing power, economically and in military terms, of China, who looks set to overtake America in both departments in the years to come. Joe Biden has to work out what to do as an increasingly belligerent Beijing casts its avaricious eyes over Taiwan. And then there is the Middle East, with the worst terror attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust and a death cult in the form of Hamas, whose supporters pervade the Middle East, with the dangerous Iranian regime among its biggest cheerleaders. Perhaps it wasn't such a great idea for Joe Biden to pump billions into Iran after all. In what is a dark time for America and the world, we need great leadership in the White House. Instead, we've got a guy that gets lost on his way into that famous building. Of course, it's not Joe Biden's fault that he is in cognitive decline, but it's an existential problem for the West. Would the botched Afghanistan exit or Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine have happened under stronger leadership? Let's be honest, Putin is hardly afraid of Biden, is he? In my view, having this confused, doddery kid sniffer in charge is an open door to all tyrants to have a go and try their luck. His supporters say that his health doesn't matter. He's got good people around him, apparently. Is that how democracy works? Did the American people vote for a bunch of interns, backroom boys and policy wonks to actually run the country? Do you remember the good old days, like under Reagan, when the president was actually in charge? Joe Biden's tenure in the White House is an accident waiting to happen. It's bad news for America, and it's bad news for the world. Joe Biden must be removed from power on the grounds of ill health. These are dangerous times. America deserves better. The world deserves better. Joe Biden shouldn't be sat in the Oval Office. He should be sat in a care home, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea, watching reruns of the Golden Girls, who look like sprightly teenagers compared to this mumbling, incoherent bag of bones. If Joe Biden is actually running the country, then I'm a Spice Girl. Posh Spice, obviously. Sometimes scary. This is an emergency. Slow-Mo Joe has got to go. Now, I'd like him impeached. You can't impeach him because he hasn't broken the law, but somebody's just got to send the men in white coats in and get him out. But what do you think? Mark at gbnews.com. We'll get to your emails shortly, but let's hear from my top pundits. TV and radio presenter Mike Porky Parry, political commentator Chloe Dobbs, and journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. Listen, Mike, let me start with you. Slow-mo Joe, he's got to go.
Well, he should never have been there in the first place, to be honest. And the problem is, as you've just highlighted there in your speech, is that we don't know who's making the decisions inside the White House anymore. I don't think it's Joe Biden. I'm sorry, I don't think it's Biden, because I still speak to people in America. I lived there and worked there for quite a long time in journalism. He has apparently handed pieces of paper before every time he makes a statement to camera. And he sometimes gets the words on this piece of paper and sometimes he doesn't. But there seems to be no link between one thing he says and another, if you see what I mean. It's literally a series of sort of, bites to a camera, and it doesn't seem to have any coherent pattern as to how the President of the United States is thinking about how to run the Western world. It's very, very frightening, in my view. And the other frightening thing is, if not Biden, is it going to be Trump? We're in a bit of a mess, aren't we, in terms of leadership in the Western world?
Well, indeed, Chloe Dobbs, Joe Biden is not just a problem for America, he's a problem for the world, especially the free world here in the West.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he's a huge liability. It's an absolute joke that one of the most powerful countries in the world is being run by a dementia patient who can't string a sentence together. And I'm sure many of you have seen, if not, look it up, the picture of Joe Biden accidentally flashing an instruction card that had to be given to him by his team to attend an important meeting where the instructions literally say, you take a seat, you make brief comments, you thank participants, you exit your seat and leave the room. I mean, he needs to have it spelled out to him that simply. He's definitely not making any of the key decisions if he needs to have that given to him. And, at a time when we've got serious conflicts going on in Ukraine and now Israel, we need strong leaders in the Western world. We really don't need Joe Biden. But he was voted in as seen as, just the better of two evils. People thought that Trump was a racist who was a scary figure to have in power. So then they voted for Joe Biden. But I don't think he's been much better, really.
Well, indeed. I mean, Nina, can you imagine the liberal press in America and here in the UK, newspapers like The Guardian, how they'd be reacting if this mad confusion came from Donald Trump? But because it's Joe Biden, no one says anything.
Well, the thing is, Mark, that Joe Biden, for all the things that you said are wrong with America, you talked about the obesity crisis. They've had an obesity crisis for 50 years. You can't blame that on Joe Biden. They've got inflation at 3.7%, which we'd dearly love to have. And fewer than 4% of Americans are unemployed. So what he calls his Bidenomics, and whoever is putting that together, whatever team, is working in that way.
Well, he's borrowed a lot of money. That debt ceiling is going up, up, up. It's higher than Everest.
Yes, but America... Well, can you imagine under Trump? And you talked about Putin. Putin and Trump is in Putin's pocket. I mean, Trump wants to come to this country to fight a court case because of the allegations about his alleged behaviour in Russia. So... it's not that simple. And I agree with you. It is very sad to see Joe Biden diminish in this way. But he was a man of great intellect, huge experience, and that's still got to be in there somewhere. You mentioned all these wonderful world leaders. Ronald Reagan, very sadly, ended his life with Alzheimer's. So he wasn't actually firing on all cylinders himself.
But he was when he was in the White House.
When he was in the White House.
He was, honestly.
Not the whole time.
When he was in the White House, I thought he was very articulate. But, yeah, there were some allegations towards the end. He'd gone a bit wobbly. But what do you think, Nina, should he be removed?
No, he shouldn't be removed, but they should...
Nina, for goodness sake, the man's a liability.
He needs to be getting medical help.
Yes, he should. He should be in a home.
OK.
And I just take one issue with you. There was a phrase in there that I think was beneath you, where you called him a kiddie sniffer. And I think I really object to that. And in a week when we've seen Steve Coogan brilliantly portraying Jimmy Savile in a BBC drama...
he's just got a strange habit of smelling children's hair. I know, and telling teenage girls that you've got to wait till you're 30 before having a permanent boyfriend. He's a creep!
that implies all sorts of things. He's a very fine family man.
Well, he smells children's hair, and I don't really fancy that. But listen,
I do think before you make these allegations...
I will grant you sniffing hair is not against the law, but I don't think it's becoming.
But family man as well, family man Nina. I mean, his son is embroiled in some of the most scandalous accusations ever made to a member of a president's family.
The fact is that he still loves his son and tries to help him. Makes him a family man, for heaven's sake. If he'd completely cast him out, he would not be a family man.
Look, I don't think there's anything dodgy about Joe Biden, but I just think his behaviour around minors is just creepy and inappropriate, that's all. But listen, I'll grant you Donald Trump is no angel himself. Now, earlier on Twitter, we asked you, should Britain have a cap on the number of refugees that it accepts every year? The results are in. And 93% say yes, and 7% say we should not. Interesting stuff. Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion. Get yours in, mark@gbnews.com. Coming up after shock video emerges showing him contradicting himself on Israel. Is Kier Starmer, the man who would be our next Prime Minister, a liar? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker Edwina Curry, plus tomorrow's front pages with instant reaction from my brilliant pundits tonight. Edwina Curry is next. She's not happy. See you in 2.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquire, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
I'll get to your emails shortly, mark@gbnews.com. But would you believe it, following his double by-election success yesterday, Sir Kier Starmer has got himself in a bit of hot water, apparently with 2 positions on whether Israel can cut off water and electricity supplies to Gaza. In the first interview with my old friend Nick Ferrari on LBC, he said yes. And to ITV, he said no. Take a listen.
I'm very clear. Israel does have that right to defend herself.
A siege is appropriate.
Cutting off power, cutting off water? Sir Keir?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. I was saying Israel had the right to self-defense, and when I said that right, it was that right to self-defense. I was not saying that Israel had the right to cut off water, food, fuel or medicines.
Watch him wriggling on the line. Yeah, but no, but yeah. He's basically politics' answer to Vicky Pollard. Well, the Guardian columnist Owen Jones is not having any of it, going on Twitter to say this is a straightforward lie. Who to believe? U-turns is one thing, but outright dishonesty? Perish the thought. Let's get the views now of former government minister and radio and television broadcaster Edwina Currie. Edwina, great to see you on the programme. Has Sir Keir got caught with his pants down this time, do you think?
Actually, not in the way that Owen Jones is saying, in my humble opinion. I mean, it's not a lie to express yourself not as well as you would like. Every politician at some point in their life express themselves less competently than they would like. Actually, Mark, a few presenters do that as well. That doesn't make you a liar. It just makes you occasionally just not quite as competent as you would like to be. Owen Jones, on the other hand, is a joy to all Tories. Owen Jones is an absolute straight-up idiot who is a propagandist for a pattern of viewpoints that really most of the electorate don't want. He's been attached to Labour for a long time. The noisier he is, the more people like me like it.
Edwina, I'd never cancel you, not on my show, but that's intemperate language, isn't it, idiot?
Maybe it's a little unkind to other idiots. Owen Jones has actually blocked me on Twitter for a very long time. So did Nadine Dorries. I regard both of those as badges of honour, I have to say. If you were to block me, I would feel myself in deep trouble and I would probably apologise profusely. But actually what Kier Starmer is doing is saying quite clearly that Israel has the right to defend itself. Of course it does. And that usually means by whatever means you've got at your disposal, not least if you're trying not to kill people in large numbers, which the Israelis clearly are not. And the longer that continues, the more I'm in favour of that. They also clearly have the ability to reduce the amount of stuff that's going into Gaza, and that may actually persuade the people in Gaza, whatever label they carry, to let those hostages go that were seized now over a week ago. Wouldn't it be nice if Kier Starmer and Owen Jones agreed on that? And we might actually then get a resolution to the crisis that's been happening there.
Which is the priority, absolutely. Look, I don't think Owen Jones is an idiot. I don't often agree with him, but perhaps he should appear on the show with Edwina and they can have a right old ding-dong. And it will be easier for Edwina to talk to him on this show because on Twitter she's been blocked. Outrageous. Now, Edwina, no doubt Kier Starmer will brush off this latest drama. Is he going to be Britain's next Prime Minister?
Well, he's facing a much more complex and deep-seated problem, which is Labour at the last election in 2019 had the worst election result for many, many decades, for 2 generations.
Yeah.
And they did so because they adopted this rather purist left-wing view that was well expressed by people like Owen Jones and, of course, Jeremy Corbyn. Now, Corbyn is still in Parliament. He's been readmitted to the Labour Party, though he has not yet got back the parliamentary whip. He is still the MP for Islington, and I note that the Labour Party has not selected his replacement yet. So we're all expecting that actually the left wing of the Labour Party will be appeased by allowing Corbyn and by proxy Owen Jones to be spokespeople for their party in future. The problem that Kier Starmer faces is that will make them unelectable again. They will have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. And it's not beyond the Labour Party to be actually so ill-disciplined as to be like that. Starmer very much wants to be Prime Minister. He's not a good campaigner. The results yesterday were not brilliant for Labour. They may look so on paper, but actually with a 35% turnout and hardly any move in their own vote, it wasn't anything to shout about in reality, Mark. And I think Starmer knows that. He's not a stupid man. And I don't think he's a bad man. He's a big improvement on Corbyn, which is about all you can say for him.
Of course, Kier Starmer would argue that his success yesterday demonstrates that Britain wants a Labour government. Last but not least, Edwina, the Tories lost votes to Reform UK and my friend Richard Tice. Are the right cancelling themselves?
Well, that's a very good question. And I'm surprised you call him your friend, because actually what we really need is a Tory government. We need a Tory government, and the Tory government is put in some jeopardy when some people drift off to the right, give themselves fancy names, get themselves a lot on GB News. I mean, who on earth would dream of doing that? And in the end, they persuade people. They persuade some voters and some activists that purism is better than actually the broad brush politics that get people elected into government in this country. We have a first past the post system. I know Richard Tice is very much against that, but we've had a referendum on it. We're not going to have another one. We have a first past the post system. We've had it for 1,000 years. And the outcome of that is if you want to get elected into government, you have to work with some people with whom you don't entirely agree, with whom you are not entirely friends, but who have more or less the same values and principles and objectives at heart. And that certainly can't be said for the Reform Party and the Labour Party, at least not in this country. So I would say to all those that are thinking of drifting off like that, get real. There's a general election coming, there's a new government coming, and it ought to be one that's led by us.
Always great to have you on the show, Edwina. Have a good weekend. We'll catch up soon. Now, coming up, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from my pundits. Don't go anywhere.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Papers are on their way. Before we continue, a quick word on Andrew Bridgen MP. You can agree or disagree with his comments about the COVID-19 vaccine, but it's absolutely right to debate the ongoing issue of excess deaths in this country and in other parts of the world. After much pushback, he finally made it happen today in the House of Commons. Sadly, the chamber was almost empty with just a handful of MPs present, including GB News star Philip Davies. In the speech, he pointed out a particularly devastating statistic, that we've experienced more excess deaths since July 2021 than in the whole of 2020. And that was the height of the pandemic. Given the total preoccupation with the COVID death toll during the pandemic, daily updates no less, when more people are dying than should be in this country across various age groups, why aren't we talking about it? Earlier in the year, excess deaths were approaching pandemic levels, and according to the British Medical Journal, are currently 5% higher across 2023 than they were in 2019 before COVID struck. 5% higher this year alone. More young people are dying than should be, as well as a worrying spike among 50 to 64-year-olds. What a sick joke, therefore, that Parliament should be all but empty for this important issue. The same Parliament that signed off lockdowns and other debatable measures for which we are now paying a huge economic and societal price. A broken economy, a mental health tsunami, a generation of damaged kids, and an NHS waiting list of 7.6 million people. Parliament was full when legislating that madness. Now it's empty. You could hear a pin drop. Excess deaths. Why the deafening silence? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.com. It's time now for the papers. Just gone 10:30, time for the papers, and we have the Daily Express. Always a cracking read. Stay-at-home voters deliver double by-election defeat for Rishi. Angry Tories say only true blue values can woo back votes. Furious Tory MPs demanded a return to true blue values in the hope that the party can win back voters after Labour snatched 2 by-elections. Telegraph now, terrorist attack in UK linked to Gaza. An asylum seeker bent on avenging deaths in Gaza has carried out a suspected terror attack in Britain. An exclusive from the Telegraph. The public has not been told that the man who came to the UK in 2020 told police he'd done it for Palestine. MPs said the public had a right to know amid warnings that demonstrations this weekend could encourage so-called lone wolf terror attacks. Some rare good news amid the fighting in the Middle East. Mother and daughter hostages are freed. An American mother and daughter became the first hostages to be released by Hamas last night, or that was tonight, tomorrow's papers, tonight, in a sign of goodwill. They were identified by the Israeli military as Judith Raanan, who's believed to be in her 60s, and her 17-year-old daughter, Natalie. Welcome home to them both. Also, MP... Sorry, I was going to put teeth back in. Sorry, PM... maybe in a year he'll just be an MP. PM considers tax cuts for high earners in election bid. Downing Street is considering a tax cut for 5 million high earners next year to galvanise Tory voters after suffering historic by-election defeats in 2 safe Tory seats. The threshold for paying the 40% higher rate of income tax could be raised in an effort to plot a path to re-election, despite polls predicting a Labour victory. The Mirror now. Horror in the Middle East, deadly weight. Tanks ready for invasion as Hamas frees 2 hostages. Stricken Palestinians still wait for aid. Stuck at border. Daily Mail, writing in the Daily Mail, Boris Johnson, America is freedom's last best hope. And Israel at war as troops get ready to invade. One young woman, conscript, tells the Mail, 2 weeks ago I was working in an ad agency. Now I'm about to fight for my nation's survival. Times now. James Blunt, pop star, looking back, I want to punch myself in the face. That's a terribly harsh sentiment. I think he's...
A few other people.
Oh, that's unkind. I think he's an absolutely cracking songwriter.
And brilliant on Twitter, or X.
Really funny on Twitter.
Great sense of humour.
And a genius of a singer. I'm putting it out there. I love James Blunt. There you go. I'm the king of unpopular opinions, aren't I? How about this? Hamas frees kidnapped mother and daughter, and Tories plot stamp duty cut to win over voters. iWeekend hostage mother and daughter are released. Also in politics, Tory MPs turn on Sunak as they lose hope of avoiding historic defeats. And last but not least, the Daily Star. 100% legit theory from cleverest thing in the world. Einstein chatbot. Humans are all aliens. The world's biggest brained chatbot says we could all be aliens from another galaxy ruled by Tesla boss Elon Musk. We never doubted it. Did you? Ask the Daily Star. Those are your front pages. Reaction now from Mike Parry, Chloe Dobbs, and of course, Nina Mishkov. So, folks, lots of stories to sink our teeth into. Mother and daughter hostages are freed. Over 200 at the moment have been kidnapped by Hamas, but for 2 to come home is good news, Nina.
It's absolutely wonderful. And you just wish that Hamas would just release all the hostages and everybody would stop, and that would be the end of everything, and no more civilians
And then they'd get all the services back into Gaza, because they've said, give us the hostages and you can have your electricity and your water and the power will come back. So it's quite a simple equation. You know, hand back the hostages and we'll restore your facilities.
Yes, I mean, Israel have intelligence and they have military power, but Hamas have civilians. That's their main weapon, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. And some of the civilians are the Palestinian people who live in Gaza, because they are as much a prisoner of Hamas as the hostages who've been kidnapped and taken there.
Are you sympathetic to the view of some who are out there marching for Palestine that what happened on the 7th of October was appalling, egregious and shocking, but a reaction to years of bad behaviour by the Israeli state?
No, nothing can explain or justify the barbaric behaviour of savages, because that's what it was. It was savage, medieval retribution against a people who they simply believe shouldn't be allowed to exist. How can you make any allowance for that whatsoever?
Yeah, correct. That would be like, I don't know, taking to the streets after 9/11 and waving flags for Osama bin Laden, wouldn't it, Chloe?
Yeah, exactly. I think whichever side of the debate you are on, pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, I understand it's a very complex issue, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. But no matter what side you're on, there's just no justification for the murder of innocent children and mothers and civilians. Yes, beheadings. I mean, there is just no way that you can celebrate that. I mean, it's quite worrying that we live in a society where the people of Britain, who I used to think were quite reasonable, but clearly not, are, filling the streets, marching down the road, celebrating the death, beheading, murder of innocent people. It's horrifying.
What did you make of Greta Thunberg, the eco-campaigner, photographed on Instagram with a Free Palestine banner?
As I said, look, it's a complex issue. I understand people have different sides. I'm not an expert on it. If she is in favour of Palestine, OK, but if she is celebrating children being murdered, that is just unacceptable.
Is there a difference?
There's no way that she is celebrating children being murdered.
Well, I mean,
it's a bit insensitive at this time in the history of the world to be waving around a Palestinian flag, isn't it?
Is it an insult to Jewish people?
Well, in a way, I can see why it is, but on the other hand, there are the factors on the other side that are mitigating in some way.
Nothing explains that behaviour. Nothing justifies it.
I agree. Nothing justifies it, and it was completely grotesque, inhuman, barbaric. All of those things that you should say. But the innocent people of Palestine are suffering and have suffered, and that's. You have to throw that into the mix.
And have been abandoned by most of the rest of the Arabian world. Egypt don't want them in Sinai. Jordan don't want them. So you say to yourself, the enormous wealth which is generated in the Middle East, the richest countries in the world, surely they've got the ability, they've got the resources, they've got the technology to solve the problem of finding a Palestine. But they're not interested in the people they say are their own. And I find that remarkable.
No, it is remarkable, isn't it? Let's have a look now at Rishi Sunak. Are we in the final days of Rishi Sunak, Chloe Dobbs? PM considers tax cuts for high earners in election bid. And Tories plot stamp duty cut to win over voters. That's the Telegraph and the Times, respectively. This sounds like deck chairs on the Titanic, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they know that they're going to go, so they can announce whatever policy they want. I find it quite interesting how a lot of the policies they're announcing at conference are things that will happen in a few years' time, when obviously they're not going to be in power. But I mean, it sounds like, which one of these articles here, is that the pressure for tax cuts is not actually coming from Rishi, it's coming from other politicians who are saying, look, we need to do something. We need to do something to show that we are Conservatives, that we are different to the Labour Party, whilst the Chancellor and the PM say that they're constrained, they can't cut taxes.
The true blue, they're talking about the true blue values, can we back that? Now, the true blue Tories are the ones who voted in Liz Truss. May I point that out to you? So, thinking you're going to go to the right and go into bonkers loony land, Liz Truss, bonkers loony, it's not going to do it because people, the general public, do not want that.
Well, I don't agree with that. You see.
Go on, mate.
Well, you see, Liz Truss got it mechanically wrong. She had the theory right, but she just executed it so badly. But I'm not as doom-laden about this. If you look at these, midterm results, by-election results, right? So, what did you expect in Mid-Bedford? Nadine Dorries abandoned the constituency about 8 months ago when she thought she was going to the House of Lords, and then Boris said, I can't do it now, I'm sorry. She just flounced off, left the House of Commons, didn't go back to see her constituents.
I know, but she's also a true blue Tory. She's a true blue Tory.
She's not anymore.
On the right.
She's not anymore.
Mate of Boris. So she is one of the people that you're saying she should be there.
She's a drama queen now. I didn't get into the House of Lords, and she flounces off. Now,
I agree. She should never have been in the position she was. She's ruined the arts.
Peter Hitchens has been writing today, and Peter worked with me at the Express, and I used to send him to by-elections. And he was a brilliant political reader of situations and always said to me, no by-election result means anything whatsoever because it's always where people get rid of their grudges.
It's a protest.
And protest and put it back.
We know that. We know that. But, I mean, I believe... I listened to Peter Curtis, who is a well-known... Peter Curtis, John Curtis, a well-known pollster. And he said this is all of those things about by-elections. It's always, revenge, it's this, it's that, there's not a big turnout. But he was saying historically, if you look at the way this is, the result and the numbers, this is actually all turning into what came before
but again,
Tony Blair.
Again, when you say the result, look at the numbers. Although the percentages sound huge in terms of the swing, the actual numbers between Labour and Tories who came second in both are quite marginal.
Yeah, so it's in both constituencies, if people didn't vote for
20%.
But it's the numbers who voted.
If people, if you look at the numbers in both of these by-elections, if people didn't vote for Richard Tice's party, the Conservatives actually would have won them.
That's right, absolutely.
So, there is some nuance to add to this, that part of this is the blue vote being split in two.
Yes, that's right.
I'm not saying the Tories are doing amazing, but we need to add a bit of context to this.
Labour didn't add a lot of people to their support, did they?
And turnout was low.
If the Tories go to the right, they are finished for decades. If the Tories go to the right, they are finished for decades.
No, they're finished because Labour then will give the vote to 16-year-olds and impressionable youngsters between the age of 16 and 18 will go around voting for all sorts of left-wing cranks.
All right. Well, listen, the Tories are in crisis.
Well, that's a damning indictment of young people.
Tories are in crisis, right? They need to smash the glass now and get the emergency hammer. So what does that look like? What do you need to hear from Rishi Sunak to change your mind about backing Labour instead? Mark at GBNews.com. I'll be asking my pundits as well. What is the emergency lever that Rishi Sunak ought to pull? Because he's still at number 10. He's still got a year to go. Coming up, more of tomorrow's front pages, including The Guardian, a couple of other papers as well. Plus, my pundits will be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. Plus, we've been asking in an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's poll, is there still snobbery towards people with regional accents? The results are in. I shall reveal all next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Well, Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, earlier today, I asked you, is there still snobbery towards people with regional accents? The results are in. And look at that, 74% say yes, there is still snobbery towards regional accents. 26% say no, there is not. Now, I told Maria that I wouldn't do emails, but listen, I've actually got to. I've actually obliged to quickly do, because I realise I've saved a couple from earlier about which is the best accent. And how about this? Frank says... Oh, no, that's not Frank. Sorry, forgive that. John says, Mark, when I came to Leicester 26 years ago with my Cockney accent, there was a Leicester City football fan at work who gave it to me every single day. And when I got to London, or when I go to London now, I get told I talk like a northerner. Poor John, he can't win. Maria, no, let's have a look. Adrian says, Mark, by far the best accent is the Geordie accent. Lovely people we are as well. Away the lads. Elizabeth says the best accent by far is the West Country, including Bristol and Gloucester. Very sad that young things like Chloe think it's some kind of dig. I love it and wish GB News had more of it. James says the most unacceptable accent are the Eton and Harrow forced speech. Let me give a shout out to producer Maria and the lovely Yorkshire accent. Look at that. Biggest county in England. Eop! Right, I'll stop right there. Now, reacting to the big stories of the day, we have Mike Parry, Chloe Dobbs, and Nina Mishkov. What a dream team. Now, we may have been able to ban under-18s from freezing their foreheads and filling their lips here in England, but it's not illegal for youngsters to receive such treatments in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. That's why Ashton Collins, a campaigner for safe plastic surgery, this week warned that young people are dodging the ban on Botox in England by heading to our neighbouring nations. So, should under-18s be banned from getting cosmetic procedures? Nina?
Absolutely. I mean...
But some of them are ugly. Maybe it's an improvement.
Well, the thing is...
I know some right-mingers.
No, the trouble is they seem to go for the lips. And why they want to have lips like carps, I don't know.
They look awful.
They look like
It doesn't
baboons'
look attractive
bottoms,
at all. I don't get
frankly. I just don't see how they're
But it's very dangerous as
It looks
well.
like... The thing is, it is dangerous, and there's so many things can go wrong. And your face is actually still... You know, if you're 16 or 17...
But what's the difference between a Botox in a 14-year-old and just brushing their hair and giving them a bath? It's improvement, isn't it? You're improving them.
I mean, one's reversible and one potentially has long-term damage.
You're injecting poison into your face.
Yeah.
That's what Botox is. Poison.
Of course you are.
God knows, we all need the help we can get, and I will take all sorts of bucket loads of makeup.
You don't need any help, Mishkov.
No, I do. But you know, I draw the line at that, and certainly for young people, they should be protected from themselves.
And I think
they're just influenced by social media.
No, I totally agree with Nina there. The one that most worries me is these young girls who want to get a derriere like Kim Kardashian, who go around having things pumped into them, and it is literally very
What about,
dangerous.
okay, Mike, what about this, though, right?
Poison.
What about your 16-year-old girl? Nice pair of boobs for her 16th birthday. What's not to like?
Well, that's a disgraceful sort of analogy.
But that could be her dream.
Well, it might be her dream.
A new rack for your 16th.
You know, at 16, my dream was to be a millionaire, but it doesn't come true.
But what if it's what she wants?
No, it doesn't matter what she wants.
Self-conscious about her appearance.
No, at 16,
It's
you
not the
don't
way you
really know
solve
what you want,
self-consciousness.
and you don't
She
really
wants
know,
to catch the
you know,
eye of
what's
an
good
eligible
for you.
gentleman like Mike Porky
Yeah,
eligible bachelor.
Well, she'd have to
So
join a very
influenced
long
by
queue.
social idiots on social media. Influenced by social media.
What do you think about this, Chloe?
Look, I've been a teenage girl not that long ago, and I myself partly, but girls around me much more, were extremely insecure about their bodies. I had so many friends with horrible eating disorders, so many girls who just feel they're not skinny enough, they're not pretty enough, they desperately want to change themselves, and you only make that problem worse by giving them access to treatments like this. You know, I think it's okay if you're, in your 50s plus whatever, you then make a reasonable decision to get some Botox to calm your wrinkles down or something. But someone who's a teenager, they're not at that age ready to make a good decision. I feel like you develop that self-confidence and acceptance of yourself over those teenage years and your 20s. It takes time.
If you're starting at 16, what are you going to look like by the time you're 40?
Exactly.
Let's be honest, you're going to be smoking hot, aren't you?
Oh, you've seen it so many times. Women's
probably not.
start
Probably
collapsing.
not. I do
I
jest, and I made a documentary about it. And actually, what happens when women get plastic surgery and men, it actually makes them look older. And then also, when they have too much of it, they look a bit odd as well. So I certainly would not recommend it.
So many odd faces around. It's just sad.
Well, listen, Nina, let's get now to some positives, which is your headline hero of the day. Who's caught your eye today?
Sarah Everard, who's the new Labour MP for Tamworth. And
congratulations to her.
Congratulations to her. And the fact that she stood up and immediately said that she commanded Rishi Sunak, suggested he drive over to the palace to King Charles, resign and call a general election immediately. I'm for that woman.
Bit of a mic drop. Brilliant stuff. How about your headline hero today, Chloe?
A little bit different. It's the UK Dementia Research Group, who have made an amazing breakthrough after years and years of not being able to find a cure for Alzheimer's and dementia. They've now developed headsets that will send electrics into the brain, create an electrical field in the brain to improve your memory. And I lost my grandmother to dementia, sadly, and it's a slow killer that just degrades you for years and years. And I've got more hope for the future now, for when I get old, now that this has been developed.
Well, that is the great shout, and it is, isn't it, Mike, the holy grail of all medicine, a cure for Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah. Little holes in your brain, isn't it? That's what happens, and your brain cells disappear. It's very, very sad,
Indeed. Well, you're not lacking brain cells, Mike, and who has caught your eye today, your headline hero?
Colleen Rooney. I love that woman.
Amazing.
I mean, she's a mother of 4 boys she's bringing up. She's got Wayne Rooney as her husband, with all the problems that brings you along. She got attacked by a fellow wag, Rebecca Vardy, although Rebecca Vardy didn't know she was being tracked by Colleen Rooney, who was very clever about it. And now Colleen Rooney has emerged from a huge High Court case, produced a documentary and given us the full story. Do you know that Colleen Rooney, on the night that her husband Wayne Rooney played his first game for England, was still so young she couldn't watch it because he was in the school play?
Imagine, yeah. No, she seems to always have the last laugh. She's a very wealthy young woman now as well, Mike. Right?
Well, in her own right, but also, of course, you know, Wayne Rooney himself is 160 million quid in the Sunday Times.
Really? Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, started all at Everton, your beloved. Look, folks, I've only got time, apologies, for just your nomination and a reason why for Backpage Zero.
Peter Bone, Tory MP, is suspended for 6 weeks. One of those posh, condescending Tories who is no better than anybody else.
Now, Peter Bone vehemently denies the allegation, but of course you're entitled to your view. And Chloe, briefly, if you can, your
not a specific individual, but the EU, because it has taken them until we've had 2 terror attacks in the EU this week for them to actually recognise that something needs to be done about illegal migration. And France has now finally called them out this week and said that they've been naive about the link between illegal migration and terrorism.
Yeah.
It's something needs to be done, and it's a shame that people have had to die in order for it to for the EU to actually take notice.
Right. A couple of seconds, Mike. Backpage Zero.
Absolutely. I mentioned her once in the show already. Nadine Dorries, an absolute disgrace as a former Tory MP. Good riddance. Let's not see you back again.
Thank you for your company, my brilliant pundits and the team. Headliners is next, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Can't wait.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquire, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Headliners is coming up next, but first, some breaking news. A photo has been released by the Israeli government showing 2 US hostages who have now been released by Hamas. The picture shows Judith Ranan and her daughter Natalie holding hands alongside Israel's lead hostage negotiator, retired Brigadier General Gal Hirsch. They've been taken to a military base in central Israel. Earlier, Israel military sources gave more information about the estimated 200 hostages taken by the terrorist organisation. They say 30 are teenagers and young children, and 20 are over the age of 60. The majority are still alive. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he is not giving up on efforts to free all captives. The Prime Minister has praised Egypt for its efforts in trying to deliver aid to civilians in Gaza. After meeting the country's president, Rishi Sunak said Palestinians are also victims of Hamas and expressed his condolences for the loss of lives. He also stressed the importance of opening a safe corridor to Gaza.
I've prioritised consistently is getting the Rafah crossing opening. It's been a feature of all my conversations, and I'm very pleased that that will now imminently happen. We announced an increase in our funding for humanitarian aid into the region, and when I met with President Sisi earlier today, he and I had a good discussion about how the UK can provide practical assistance on the ground to ensure the sustainability of that aid through the crossing to the people who need it.
So Kier Starmer says former Tory voters have put their trust and confidence in the Labour Party after they overturned Conservative majorities to win 2 by-elections. The video we're about to show you contains some flash photography. In Tamworth, Sarah Edwards overturned a Tory majority of more than 19,000. Meanwhile, Alistair Strepham took Mid-Bedfordshire with a 20.5% swing. That's the largest Labour by-election win since 1945. Storm Babette continues to cause major problems across the United Kingdom. In Suffolk, only essential travel is advised and children have been forced to shelter in schools following severe flooding. This afternoon, a passenger plane came off the runway at Leeds Bradford Airport while landing. Emergency services responded as passengers were evacuated. However, there were no reported injuries. In Scotland, some roads and small bridges have collapsed. 3 people have died as a result of the storm. Most recently, a man in his 60s who was swept away in Shropshire. And in Bredsall in Derbyshire, there are also flooded streets, homes and businesses. Firefighters have been tackling a huge blaze in the Whiteley area of East Kilbride. Now, those watching on television can see eyewitness footage of the fire, which has reportedly consumed several homes in the area. Our eyewitness described the scene to GB News as unreal. Police Scotland have closed several roads as they deal with this emergency. This is GB News across the UK on television, in your car, on digital.